This video was made in association with KnifeInformer.com. Head on over to Knife Informer for all of your blade-related needs, including reviews, comparisons, stats, and more. What is up, everybody, and welcome. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at this Todd Begg Glimpse 7.0 prototype number 2. This was a lottery knife from G8 2016, and I am super excited to be able to share it with you guys because there's a few things going on with this knife that I find particularly interesting and special. So let's go ahead and jump into it. We'll get a quick look at the stats. We'll take a look at sort of a size comparison against the PM2 and RAT2 as we do on this channel. And then, of course, we will take a look at the weight real quick in addition to the size. And that will give us some perspective on what we're working with. So, as you guys probably already know, Todd Begg designs pretty large to begin with. We are looking at what? 9 inches here. So, definitely a particularly large knife. And I don't really think I need to explain that one any further. You can see the PM2 is already a big knife to begin with. It's pretty much dwarfed in almost every, well, yeah, in pretty much every single region by the Glimpse. And of course, this is the Glimpse version 7.0, and it is the first version that has been sort of a composite material build, as far as I know anyway. Maybe like super early Glimpses were this way as well, but in terms of more recent history, this is the first Glimpse that is a full composite construction with just some titanium interior liners versus, you know, like a full titanium frame lock as the at least 6.0, 5.0 were, you know, the full titanium frame locks. So let's go ahead and take a look at the weight. All right, so we are looking at only 5.19 ounces. And guys, that's really the result of doing this kind of almost full composite material construction, is that the weight for the size is impeccable. I mean, at 5.19 ounces, it's actually really, you know, not that heavy, especially for something of, you know, this much size. It's not a particularly thin blade stock, although it's not particularly thick either. But that's pretty impressive. Let's see how that compares to the production version of the knife, 5.47. So you can see it is a little bit lighter than the production version. I don't know if the carbon fiber versus the micarta has some effect there. Or if there's maybe just a little bit more metal construction inside of the actual production version. You know, if we really look at these knives, they seem pretty much identical in terms of features. So it might just be a difference between carbon fiber. I would think carbon fiber would be lighter than micarta, but maybe not. So yeah, slight little bit of weight difference there. Kind of interesting. Let's go ahead and move on. So jumping into the features and flaws, if you'd like to see my opinion on the ergonomics of the Glimpse, sort of the way it feels in the hand, features like jimping and how all of that plays a part, you know, whether or not you can get up into this finger choil, how useful the blade shape is and all of that, then go ahead and go down to the link in the description below for the production version of this knife. They are going to be identical in terms of all those statistics, and I've already done the video on that, so I don't want to waste everybody's time with repeating myself. So if you want to learn about the aspects of the build and like how all of this is put together with the internal liners and everything, go check out this video. And on this one, I'm just going to be focused on sort of the Todd Begg aspects of the knife. So in terms of features and flaws, let's go ahead and jump into the first big feature, which is going to be this ridiculous mirror polish blade. Now, I didn't really want to open up this video with gloves on and everything like that. So I have a microfiber cloth here, and we're going to polish as well as we can. Now, I haven't really been able to get a perfect polish out of this blade, and that's not the blade's fault. That's just lack of effort on my end. But let's see here. We're going to do our best to give you a pretty good idea of what we're working with. I think I would need some sort of cleaner to be able to get it perfect. But I'm going to stand up here and see what you guys can see. So one thing that you'll notice is that the swedge is pretty perfect in terms of mirror. The flat's pretty perfect in terms of mirror. But if you look at the bevel, there's kind of an orange peel finish. See that? And I don't really know what that's all about, guys. I don't know if that's like a forced result of the curvature of the hollow grind. And yeah, I'm just not sure. I've never held a fully mirror polished blade before, so I don't really know what to look for or what is involved in kind of getting that finish. But that kind of orange peelness to the actual bevel makes it an imperfect mirror, and I don't know, I think that kind of takes away from some of the fun of it, but it is super interesting, and I love that the whole blade just polishes up, and man, this particular blade is really difficult to actually get good photographs of because, you know, it just wants to reflect everything. So I don't have a room with white walls and white everything. So, you know, in my pictures on Instagram and stuff, you can kind of see things being mirrored, even though I tried a bunch of different angles. So definitely a really interesting blade. You know, obviously not something that somebody wants for general EDC use, but also not something that you can't really cut with either, because you can pretty much buff out little scratches and stuff, I would think. But yeah, so that's pretty much it for the blade. Definitely a really interesting feature on this knife. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is the detent. Now, the detent on this knife, in my opinion, is way too light. You can see here that because the knife is so incredibly smooth, you can get deployment with very minimal effort, but I'm really not using any effort to break the detent here. It's super light. And then, of course, if we light switch at a vertical position, it's not going anywhere. Now, I am told this is not a problem. When Rit received this knife, he reached out to Todd, and Rit, being like me, generally preferring a stronger detent, asked Todd, hey, you know, I think the detent's too light. Is there something you can do about that? And Todd said, well, you know, I choose to do them really light because I think that, you know, if the knife is smooth enough that you don't need a really strong detent to get a great action. But I want my customers to be happy, so if you'd like a stronger detent, please send it back and I will adjust that for you. So that's pretty cool. Rit ended up keeping the lighter detent because he really appreciated Todd's description of why he prefers that. And to an extent, Rit agreed. So Rit ended up keeping this one pretty light. But Rit also did pick up a bodega recently that I saw on Instagram, which Todd Begg made, and he had asked for, you know, kind of a stronger detent on that one, and in those videos I can see the detent is much stronger. So while it's not my personal favorite on this particular knife, it is very much worth noting that if you're ever going to get yourself a custom bag, they are very, very open to you submitting your request for how you would like your detent to function. So I think that's perfectly reasonable, and it's in no way a gripe. I actually look at that as a good thing, them being so kind of open to just catering to what their customer wants the most. Real quick, I'm seeing in my notes, I forgot to mention a moment before, this blade is actually made out of RWL 34, which is the same steel that you are going to see out of Grimsmo knives. So moving on, one big issue that I did have with this knife is that the lock bar actually disengaged on me once while I was polishing the blade. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get it to disengage on video, but there have been multiple times. You can see the lockup's not very far, and it's kind of a polished tang, and it really does not take much to get this lock to slip. You can see it's got maybe 5% lockup, and it's just a pretty smooth surface, so it really doesn't take much to break this. So just be careful. I would honestly, on such an expensive knife, expect better. So that did bum me out. I really did. I wasn't prepared for that to happen at all. I was holding the knife sort of like this, and I was polishing it, and I was kind of working my hand like this, and the pressure that I put on the blade literally closed it, and I had my fingers in the way, and it could have been a lot worse than it was. So that was definitely a little bit nerve-wracking. The next thing that I want to mention is that I'm not really a micarta guy, and I thought that this knife was a little bit ugly when I first saw it, but this micarta is actually really nice. He's finished it very well. It feels textured but very smooth. The sort of meeting place of the G10 exterior and the micarta inlay is the most flawless inlay that I have personally ever seen. So in every single knife video I've ever talked about, there not being anything to catch your finger on or anything like that, this knife completely steps it up to a level that I didn't know was possible. It really honestly feels like the two materials are one, and that they're fused, and that it's just a color difference, and that it's all one thing. He had to have used some sort of filling to bridge that gap. I don't understand it. It's unfreaking believable. It's impossible to see where one begins and the other ends. It's really just kind of a perfect inlay. So super impressed with that. If we take a look at the original production version, it is similarly perfect in terms of the inlay. However, you can see in certain areas up towards the tip, kind of where one ends and the other begins, it's not quite to the perfection that Todd's handmade piece is. The final thing that I want to end this video on is kind of comparing the production version. I have one of these first run of 100 from Blade Show 2017, and kind of compare that to the Todd Begg handmade prototype. Now, these things are pretty much identical, but there are some key differences that I thought you guys might find interesting. So the first, if you can see here, the blade stock thickness is the same on both knives, but you'll see here that on the production version, there's a 45-degree light chamfer all the way through this area and all around the flipper tab. And there is no chamfer. It's more of just like it's smoothed out so that it's kind of rounded, but it's not a edged chamfer around the edges of the Todd Begg. You can also see on the tang that the production has kind of that curved cutout on the tang for the lock bar, whereas Todd's is more flat. So that's kind of interesting. You'll also notice that Todd's lock bar is ever so slightly thicker than on the production version. And then you'll also notice that on the production version, the slip, or where you transition from the finger choil to the edge, is pretty much, you go right into the edge, whereas on the Todd Begg, there's this whole section here that I can rub my thumb on, and it's smoothed out. So I know some people complain about this. Do know that on the production version, you do not have that issue. And then that's pretty much it. The flute is slightly more curved down on the Begg version than the production version. And I already mentioned the chamfering. That's pretty much going to be the only differences, guys. And then, of course, on the production version, you just have the regular tie clip. On this version, you have the cracked ice clip and the cracked ice interior for the backspacer and everything. But I am also given to understand that, you can get that stuff done aftermarket, on the production versions as well. And yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. Those are going to be all of the differences. Pretty interesting that they're, you can't see too many differences, but there are those slight different features, especially the chamfering is the particularly interesting thing that I noticed between the two. So thanks so much for Rit for sending his knives along. Of course, he sent along this Glimpse prototype and this Lee Williams. Really appreciate it. And it is worth noting, guys, this knife is for sale. Rit, he lives in Thailand. He wanted to send this knife along so that it could be sold in the U.S. market. He has a ton of wicked customs, and, it's just time to generate funds so that he can try out new fun stuff. So if you are interested in purchasing this knife, it is not cheap, but feel free to go ahead and shoot me an email at tovarishworks@gmail.com, and I can help you out with that. So the knife will be in my care until it is sold. If you know anybody that's interested in it, definitely send them along. And if you guys would like to see beautiful pictures of all these amazing knives, you can do so by following me on Instagram at tovarishworks. And of course, if you'd like to reach me by email for any reason whatsoever, you can do so by hitting me up at gmail.com. Sorry, at tovarishworks@gmail.com. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and I will see you next time.